Thanks.
Thanks, Gadi. I'm Josselyn Simpson. I'm the Americas Editorial Director for Thought Leadership at the Economist Intelligence Unit. Michael is an editor on the team and also one of the people who helped develop this initiative 3 years ago, so great to have him here today. In the 3 years of Pride and Prejudice, the Economist Intelligence Unit has each year done research among executives on some business topic related to the overall theme of the program. In year 1, it was about executives' views on LGBT diversity and inclusion broadly. In year 2 last year, it was about the role that 3 crucial groups in the workplace can play: young employees, women, and leadership teams. And this year, we looked particularly at how businesses are thinking about their role as social advocates right now for LGBT diversity and inclusion and what that means for the future.
Oh, go back. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. So as in past years, we based this research on a survey of business executives globally. Here you'll find the splits by region and the top industries represented. They included finance, tech, professional services, and many others. Among the executives that we interviewed, 30% were from the C-suite, 40% at the director level, and the remainder manager and below. And the sample came from companies that was about evenly split from those that were multinational firms and domestic firms, as well as those that made above and below $500 million in annual revenue.
So these first pair of charts show how LGBT rights fit in with the broader global advocacy picture. And we asked both which areas of advocacy people felt had been most affected by the political volatility and turmoil of the past couple of years, and also in which areas they expected the most change. And LGBT rights are the yellow bit. And you can see that people thought they were less affected than other areas, particularly last year, immigrants' rights, but also that people expect relatively little change this year. And that just highlights how hard it is to break through across a whole range of very worthy causes, and highlights the historical fact that even when a lot of progress has been made, it can still take years, decades, even generations to really drive progress home.
So here on your left, you will see a photo of Fabricio Alvarado Munoz, who was a recent presidential candidate in the Costa Rican election. He ran primarily on an anti-same-sex marriage platform that was largely in response to a ruling from the Inter-American Court of Human Rights, which is actually based in Costa Rica, that was urging countries in the region to legalize the practice. And this was previously not a particularly hot-button issue, but obviously the popularity of his campaign demonstrated how LGBT rights in many parts of the world, the progress on those issues is still often at risk. And importantly, this phenomenon is not just limited to the developing world. Today, we'll see concerns in places like Italy, even here in the United States.
So bringing it back to the business world, this is Milton Friedman, everyone's famous favorite conservative boogeyman. He is the man who did not say the business of business is business, but he did say that the social responsibility of business is to increase profits. So don't spend on philanthropy, certainly don't spend on social advocacy. Of course, today, a lot of consumers and a lot of executives themselves think that businesses are a crucial source of social advocacy. And particularly in our political climate, with all of our instant communications mediums, and with the huge growth in corporate profits over the past several years, the question of what businesses ought to be doing in this area is more salient than ever.
So we took a look at the relationship between LGBT advocacy and a variety of business metrics, or metrics of business competitiveness. And what we found is that companies that identified themselves as LGBT advocates were actually significantly more likely to rate themselves higher in a variety of metrics, things like brand reputation, having good talent managers, even financial performance there on the far right. And part of the reason that we think this is, and research has been done elsewhere as well to support this, is that companies that are LGBT advocates have in fact done a lot of the internal work to support diversity and inclusion. So it's those companies that are reaping the benefits of more diverse and inclusive environments. And so when you have better talent attraction and retention, increased creativity and innovation, all those things impact the bottom line. And these stats, we think, should continue to support the business case for further advocacy for LGBT rights. And as part of this trend, one of the primary drivers of bringing companies to think more critically about how they support LGBT advocacy is the race or war for talent. We found that the primary issue among respondents in our survey that they considered a driver for increased LGBT advocacy was increased competition for younger workers. We've seen growing demands for corporate advocacy in a wide range of issues in the broader population, but this is especially true among younger workers, millennials, and will only continue to increase. And one of the means by which they can do that is continued support of policymaking for LGBT rights in their countries. And that's the number on the right, is 47% believe that there should be increased support for policymaking on these issues.
Which raises the question of what they're actually going to do. And what we see is that executives do think that 3 years from now, businesses in their country are much likelier to have to be an agent of progress for LGBT rights than they are today. 38% said that they expect to be somewhat more prominent, and it's over half when you look at much more and somewhat more prominent. And another 40% said at least things are going to stay the same. They're not going to get worse. So you would expect they'd be putting their money where their mouth is, but no. The slightly less good news is that just over a third of companies expect to increase their spending on LGBT public advocacy over the next 3 years. The okay news here is that just over half say they're not going to spend more, but they're not going to spend less either. And that though raises the question of what's going on with those companies. Michael mentioned companies that don't think now that they're particularly strong advocates for LGBT rights. And that's about 28% of all the companies that we looked at. And what we see there is a more difficult situation. So 47% of them say that it's not going to get any harder for them to advocate in their countries, but it's not going to get any easier either. But the scary thing is that when you look at the blue and the yellow on the left-hand side, those are all the people who think it's going to get somewhat or much harder to advocate for LGBT rights over the next 3 years in their country. And what we saw when we looked at this regionally is that 60% of the companies in Latin America said that they thought that businesses in their country would have to become stronger advocates. But they are also the ones who most often say it's going to become harder to make that shift. And we think that ties back to some of the political issues that Michael was talking about, and really raises some issues that tie to all of the other topics talked about here today in terms of political will and support from the bottom up as well as from companies top down.
And so to close, we'd like to include a quote from Mark Benioff, founder and CEO of Salesforce.com, that essentially rebukes Milton Friedman's quote from earlier. And he says is that companies can do more than just make money. They can serve others. The business of business is improving the state of the world. And we also hope, that as our research demonstrates, that improving the state of the world can actually support business competitiveness, financial performance, and continue to support the business case for advocacy. With that, we'd like to thank you for your time. And we actually published a full report on this research that you can find at pride.economist.com. This is actually not myself listed there. I'm a different Michael, that our colleague in Asia who actually worked on this research and led the initiative. So we hope you enjoy the remainder of today's sessions. And with that, we'd like to welcome Tom Standage back to the stage.
Thank you very much.